What if everything you've been told about the sale of Roloff Farms is a lie? What if the family feud, the pricing disagreements, and the move to Washington were all just a smokescreen for a much darker, more desperate reality unfolding behind the gates of the farm? We've been following the official story from TLC, but tonight we have an exclusive update that changes everything. Based on deeply troubling reports from sources close to the Roloff family and the production itself, we're about to uncover a secret that Matt Roloff has allegedly been trying to hide for months. A secret so significant that it forced an emergency, off-camera family meeting just days ago. A meeting that has reportedly left the future of the entire Roloff dynasty hanging by a thread. The $4 million price tag wasn't the real story. The real story is what Matt is truly afraid of losing. This is a story you will not see on television, and it's one that the network and the family likely do not want you to know. The details we've received are shocking and, frankly, heartbreaking. Before we dive into this exclusive report, do me a favor. If you believe there's more to this story than meets the eye, hit that like button right now. And if you want to stay ahead of the official narrative and get the updates that matter, make sure you are subscribed to LPBW Update with all notifications turned on. You are not going to want to miss a single second of this. The bombshell report, the secret emergency meeting. All right, let's get straight to it. Our story began late last Tuesday night. While the cameras were dark and the production crew was gone for the day, a series of cars were seen pulling up the long driveway to the main farmhouse. According to an insider, a source who has been connected to the farm's operations for over a decade and has chosen to remain anonymous to protect their livelihood, this was no casual family get-together. This was, in their words, a crisis summit. Present at this meeting were allegedly Matt Roloff, Caryn Chandler, Amy Roloff, and her husband, Chris Merrick. What's more telling, however, is who was summoned from a distance. Our source reports that both Zach and Jeremy were on a conference call, patched into the room on speakerphone. This wasn't a social call, this was an intervention. For years, we've seen the fractures in this family. We've seen the arguments, the hurt feelings, the passive-aggressive social media posts, but we have never seen all the key players brought together like this, under a veil of such secrecy. So, what was the emergency? Why the sudden off-the-books meeting? Our source claims the agenda was a single, terrifying topic: the true financial state of Roloff Farms and, by extension, Matt Roloff himself. The official narrative is that Matt is a successful author, television personality, and agricultural entrepreneur. But the report we've received paints a very different picture. It suggests that Matt Roloff is facing a severe liquidity crisis, a cash flow problem so immense that he is, allegedly, on the verge of financial collapse. The source described the atmosphere in the room as funereal. Matt, usually the confident patriarch, was reportedly pale and agitated. Caryn was trying to maintain a brave face, but was visibly shaken. But it was Amy's reaction that was most telling. Our source overheard part of the conversation through a partially open door, and they claim Amy said something to the effect of, "I warned you this would happen, Matt. I told you for years." Chris Merrick, the pragmatic outsider, was apparently there to act as a neutral party, attempting to translate the stark financial realities to the family without the baggage of decades of emotional history. This meeting wasn't about selling the farm to the kids anymore. This was about saving the farm from being seized by the bank. The facade of success, unraveling Matt's financial web. So how could this happen? How could Matt Roloff, the mastermind of pumpkin season, be in such dire straits? To understand this, we need to look past the charming TV edits and examine the cold, hard numbers. Our theory, based on information from multiple sources, including a local Hillsborough business associate who has had dealings with the farm, is that Matt has been asset rich but cash poor for years. Let's break it down. First, the constant expansion, the elaborate attractions, the meticulous maintenance, and most significantly, the massive new dream home he began building for himself and Caryn. Construction costs have skyrocketed nationwide. Permitting, materials, labor. Our source estimates that the budget for that home likely ballooned to a figure far beyond Matt's initial projections. He was sinking cash into a massive illiquid asset, a house he couldn't easily sell, while his income streams were not growing at the same rate. Second, the colossal overhead of the farm itself. Property taxes in Washington County, Oregon are substantial. Insurance for a public-facing business like Roloff Farms is astronomical. Then there's the payroll for staff, the constant upkeep of buildings and equipment. Pumpkin season provides a huge injection of cash for 1 month a year, but for the other 11 months, the farm is a financial drain. It's an entity that is constantly consuming cash. The business associate we spoke to put it bluntly. Matt is a brilliant creator, but he's a dreamer. He builds first and asks how to pay for it later. For years, the TLC money was the safety net that caught him. But with the show's future always in question and the kids branching off, that safety net is looking frayed. This brings us to the failed sale of the north side of the property. The $4 million asking price wasn't just an ambitious valuation. According to our theory, it was a number born of desperation. Matt didn't just want that money. He needed it. He needed it to cover the costs, overruns on his new house, to pay down debt accumulated from years of ambitious projects, and to create a financial cushion for his and Caryn's retirement. When no buyer emerged and he was forced to pull the listing and pivot to a rental model, it wasn't a strategic business decision. It was a catastrophic failure. The rental income, while helpful, is a drop in the bucket compared to the lump sum of cash he was counting on. This, we believe, is what triggered the current crisis and the emergency family meeting. The dream was dead and the bills were coming due. The real reason Zach walked away, that it was never just about the price now. Let's re-examine the most painful chapter of this saga, the falling out between Matt and Zach. The show portrayed this as a simple, albeit emotional, breakdown in negotiations over price. Zach felt his father was prioritizing profit over legacy. Matt felt his son was entitled and didn't appreciate the value of what he had built. But what if that was only the surface story? Our exclusive theory, supported by whispers from production insiders, is that Zach walked away for a much more pragmatic and damning reason. He saw the financial iceberg ahead of the ship. Think about it. Zach, with Tori's guidance, has grown into a responsible husband and father of 3. He has his own mortgage, his own bills, his own family to protect. When he went into negotiations with his father, he and Tori wouldn't have just been looking at the sentimental value of the farm. They would have demanded to see the books, the profit and loss statements, the balance sheets, the debt load. What if, during that process, Matt was forced to reveal, or Zach astutely discovered, the true precarious financial health of the farm? What if Zach realized that he wasn't just being asked to buy a piece of land, but to inherit a mountain of debt in a business model that was fundamentally unstable without the constant infusion of TLC cash? This theory completely reframes their infamous argument. Zach's anger might not have been just about the price tag. It could have been the anger of a son realizing his father was trying to offload a financial ticking time bomb onto him and his young family. The phrase, "you're not creating a legacy, you're creating a job," takes on a whole new chilling meaning. He wasn't just talking about the physical labor. He was talking about the crushing financial labor of keeping the farm afloat. Our source close to production adds another layer. They report that the final explosive conversation between Matt and Zach was far worse than what was aired. There were accusations of financial mismanagement, the source claims. Zach basically told his dad he was running the farm into the ground with his vanity projects and that he wouldn't be the one to bail him out. Seen through this lens, Zach and Tori's move to Washington wasn't just an emotional retreat. It was a calculated financial escape. They were getting their family away from the blast radius of what they saw as an inevitable collapse. They weren't abandoning the family, they were protecting their future. Amy and Chris's position, the "I told you so" moment. This brings us to Amy Roloff, a central figure in this alleged crisis meeting. For years on the show, Amy was often portrayed as the cautious, risk-averse counterpoint to Matt's ambitious, spendthrift nature. Their disagreements over finances were a recurring theme. Now, it seems her caution was not pessimism but prophecy. When Amy sold her half of the farm to Matt in that multi-million-dollar buyout, it was framed as the end of an era. It was her final, painful step in moving on from her past. But our theory suggests it was also the single smartest financial decision of her life. She didn't just sell a property, she cashed out before the bubble burst. Amy, more than anyone, knew the real numbers. She knew the cost of Matt's dreams. She knew the razor-thin margins of pumpkin season and the year-round expenses. By forcing the buyout, she extracted her equity in liquid cash, freeing herself from the farm's financial fate and securing her own future with Chris. Now, at this secret meeting, she is no longer a business partner. She is a co-parent, a grandmother, and a worried observer who is seeing her darkest financial fears for her ex-husband come to pass. Her presence, along with Chris's, wasn't just for emotional support. Our source believes Matt had a specific, desperate request for them, which we will get to in a moment. Chris Marrick's role in this is crucial. As a successful real estate agent, Chris understands asset valuation, debt-to-income ratios, and market realities far better than anyone else in the family. He is the impartial expert in the room. When Amy voices her concerns, Chris is likely there with the data and the professional experience to back her up. He's not driven by the family's emotional history. He's looking at the bottom line, and our report suggests that what he sees is deeply alarming. The conversation likely wasn't just Amy saying, "I told you so," but Chris calmly explaining, "Here are the 5 ways this could lead to bankruptcy." The Caryn factor in the postponed wedding. And what about Caryn Chandler, the woman who was supposed to be the future Mrs. Roloff, living out her golden years with Matt in their custom-built dream home? For months, the question has been, why haven't they set a wedding date? The public excuses have been about the house construction and family drama. But our report suggests the real reason is far more serious. The wedding is on hold indefinitely due to this financial crisis. A wedding, especially the kind of grand affair one might expect from a TV personality, is expensive. The dream home, which was supposed to be their marital palace, has now become, according to our theory, a financial albatross around Matt's neck. Caryn, who left her long-term job as the farm manager to build a life with Matt, tied her future security to his. She is now staring at a future that looks far less secure than she imagined. Let's be clear, this is speculative, but it connects the dots. Could the tension we've seen between them be less about wedding planning and more about the immense stress of a looming financial disaster? One can only imagine the conversations happening behind closed doors. The dream of a relaxed retirement has been replaced by the nightmare of mounting debt. Our source close to the farm operations noted a distinct shift in Caryn's demeanor over the past few months. She used to be bubbly, always involved, the source says. Now she seems distant, stressed. She's not as present on the farm as she used to be. It feels like she's trying to distance herself from the mess. This isn't to question her love for Matt. It's to acknowledge the human reality of the situation. The promise of a secure, happy future with Matt is now clouded by uncertainty. The dream is turning into a financial burden, and the stress is reportedly fracturing the very foundation of their relationship. The emergency meeting wasn't just about the farm. It was about the viability of their entire future together. Could Caryn be having second thoughts? Not about Matt the man, perhaps, but about the financial catastrophe he has allegedly created. The crisis is no longer just about business. It has become deeply personal, threatening the relationships that Matt holds most dear and potentially unraveling the final chapter he had so carefully planned for himself. So here we are. Matt Roloff, the patriarch, is allegedly backed into a corner, his financial empire crumbling. His sons, Zach and Jeremy, are distanced, aware of the crisis, but unwilling or unable to get involved. His ex-wife, Amy, and her new husband, Chris, are brought in as worried consultants to a disaster they saw coming from a mile away. And his fiancée, Caryn, is watching their dream future dissolve into a nightmare, debt, and stress. This secret meeting was not about reconciliation. It was an act of desperation. And according to our source, Matt made a final, shocking proposal during that call, a last-ditch effort to save himself in the farm. An offer so radical it would either reunite the family or shatter it into pieces forever. What was that offer, and what does it mean for the future of Roloff Farms? We have those exclusive details, and they are more shocking than anything we've discussed so far. It involves a nuclear option that would change everything you thought you knew about this family. We took you inside the secret off-camera crisis meeting that brought the fractured Roloff family to the brink. We detailed explosive reports of Matt Roloff's dire financial situation, a cash flow crisis so severe it threatens to consume the entire farm. We theorized that Zach's departure was not just about price, but about escaping a financially sinking ship, and that Amy's buyout was the shrewdest move she ever made. But we left you with a cliffhanger. Matt, cornered and desperate, was about to make a shocking proposal to his estranged family, a final, desperate gambit to save his legacy. Our source, who was privy to the fallout from this meeting, has outlined the details of this proposal, and frankly, it is a move of such breathtaking audacity that it explains everything. The tension, the silence, and the fear we've been seeing from the entire family. Matt's final gambit, the Roloff family holdings proposal. So what was the nuclear option? According to our insider, Matt did not simply ask for a loan. That would have been too simple, too clean. Matt's plan was far more intricate and, in many ways, far more insidious. He allegedly proposed the complete dissolution of the current ownership structure of Roloff Farms and the creation of a new entity, a formal, legally binding family corporation, which we'll call Roloff Family Holdings. Here's how it would work. Matt would retain a controlling interest, say 50% of the shares, maintaining his position as CEO and patriarch. However, the remaining 49% would be offered up for sale exclusively to the family. This wasn't an offer of a gift or an inheritance. This was a capital call. He was asking his children and, more shockingly, his ex-wife and her new husband to buy back into the farm. The very farm they had all, in their own ways, just managed to escape. The numbers being discussed, according to our source, were staggering. Matt wasn't looking for a few $100,000 to tide him over. He was looking for a massive capital injection, estimated to be in the range of $2 to $2.5 million. This money would be used to immediately pay off high-interest private loans, settle the outstanding debts on his construction projects, and create a solvent operating budget for the farm for the next 5 years. In essence, Matt was asking his family to fund his bailout. He was leveraging the one thing he had left, the sentimental, emotional pull of the Roloff legacy, to solve a financial crisis of his own making. He was asking Amy to risk the very retirement she had secured by selling to him. He was asking Zach and Tori to divert the money they were using to build their own secure life in Washington. He was asking Jeremy and Audrey, who are busy building their own brand and buying their own multi-million-dollar properties, to liquidate their assets and invest them back into his dream. It was a proposal disguised as a gesture of unity, but in reality, it was a financial trap. If they said yes, their financial futures would once again be chained to his and to the farm's volatile business model. They would become minority shareholders with no real power, their investment completely at the mercy of Matt's decisions. The very decisions that led to this crisis in the first place. But if they said no, they would be the ones who let Roloff Farms die. They would be the children who refused to save their father's legacy. It was a checkmate move designed to corner them emotionally and financially. And the reaction, as you can imagine, was explosive. The verdict is in how the family reacted to the bombshell. The first response, according to our source, came from the speakerphone. It was Zach. His rejection was reportedly not just a simple no. It was described as a burst of raw, unfiltered anger. Remember, Zach had already been through the ringer negotiating for the farm. He had seen the books. He knew the truth. Our source claims Zach's voice was shaking with fury as he said something to the effect of, "Absolutely not. You are not going to make your problem my family's problem. We are done. I told you this would happen, and I will not sacrifice my children's future to bail you out of your mistakes." This was more than a business refusal. It was a personal condemnation. It was the final severance of a financial cord. Zach was drawing a line in the sand, not just for himself, but for his entire family. He was confirming our theory. He knew the extent of the financial mismanagement and wanted no part of it. The conversation, which was already tense, went ice cold after Zach's outburst. Jeremy's response, as is often the case, was reportedly more measured but equally firm. Jeremy and Audrey are very conscious of their own brand. They cultivate an image of intentional living, financial savvy, and building their own legacy. Tying themselves to a failing family business would be catastrophic for that image. The insider reports that Jeremy waited for Zach to finish and then spoke calmly, but with a tone that left no room for negotiation. He allegedly explained that their capital was tied up in their own projects, their new farm, their books, their various business ventures. He couched the rejection in professional language, speaking of portfolio diversification and risk management. But the message was the same. The answer was no. He was choosing his own family's dream over his father's failing one. For the first time in years, Zach and Jeremy were in perfect public alignment. They were out. The two sons Matt had always hoped would take over the farm were now the first to officially abandon the sinking ship. With the sons out, all eyes in that room turned to Amy. This is where the situation becomes almost Shakespearean in its tragedy. Amy was the one who had suffered the most under Matt's financial risks during their marriage. She was the one who finally got free. And now she was being asked to dive back into the fire to save the man who had, in her view, caused so much of it. Our source described a long, painful silence. Amy reportedly just stared at Matt, a decade of frustration, anger, and a flicker of remaining pity in her eyes. She didn't yell. She didn't lecture. The source claims she simply shook her head and said, "Matt, I just can't do this anymore." But it was Chris Marek, the calm and collected realtor, who delivered the final, logical death blow to the proposal. He allegedly stood up, walked over to a notepad, and began to sketch out the basic math of the situation for Matt. He wasn't emotional, he was factual. The source claims Chris said, "Matt, with all due respect, you're not offering an investment, you're asking for a rescue. The company has too much debt and no clear path to profitability without the show's income. No sane financial advisor would ever recommend this. I love Amy and I care about this family, but I cannot, in good conscience, let her pour her entire financial security into what is right now a burning building. Chris didn't just support Amy's decision, he validated it with professional authority. He exposed Matt's proposal for what it was, not a business opportunity, but an act of pure desperation. The united front of the children, combined with the logical and emotional rejection from Amy and Chris, left Matt with nothing. His last-ditch effort had failed spectacularly. The summit was over, and he was utterly, completely alone. The secret that's driving the crisis: high-interest private lenders. The family's universal rejection of Matt's proposal makes sense, but it still doesn't quite explain the sheer level of panic that prompted such a risky meeting in the first place. A conventional business loan or a mortgage from a bank comes with slow, predictable consequences. This felt different. This felt like a deadline was looming. This leads us to the most explosive part of our report, a theory based on whispers from the local business community in Hillsborough. The theory is this: Matt Roloff's debt isn't just with traditional banks. In his haste to fund the new house and keep the farm afloat, we believe he may have turned to private lenders, sometimes known as hard money lenders. For those who don't know, these lenders provide cash quickly and with fewer questions than a bank, but they do so at a brutal cost. Sky-high interest rates, sometimes 15, 20, even 25%, and extremely aggressive repayment terms. Defaulting on a hard money loan isn't like defaulting on a bank mortgage. The consequences are swift and severe. They can seize assets with shocking speed. This theory, if true, would explain everything. It would explain the desperation. It would explain why Matt needed such a large sum of cash immediately, not just a steady income stream. He wasn't just trying to manage his debt, he was trying to outrun a predator. The failed $4 million sale of the farm wasn't just a disappointment, it was the trigger for a potential default on one of these private loans. He had likely used the entire farm as collateral, and the lender was now coming to collect. This also adds another layer of betrayal to his proposal to the family. He wouldn't just be asking them to invest in his business, he would be asking them to use their clean money to pay off his dirty, dangerous debt without ever telling them the true nature of the threat. He would be transferring the risk from himself to them. This would explain why Chris Marek, with his real estate background, would have been so adamantly against the plan. He would recognize the signs of a borrower in over his head with a non-traditional lender. He could see that the farm wasn't just in debt, it was potentially compromised. The family wasn't just being asked to help, they were being asked to step in front of a financial bullet without even knowing the gun was loaded. The Forgotten Son's prophecy, Jacob Roloff's role in the chaos. In all of this high-stakes family drama, there's one son who wasn't on that conference call, but whose presence looms large over this entire saga: Jacob. For years, Jacob has been the philosophical rebel of the family. He publicly denounced the show, calling it scripted and inauthentic. He has spoken out about the pressures of growing up on television and has embraced a simpler, more earthbound lifestyle with his wife, Isabel, and their son. While he may seem like a sideline character, our theory is that Jacob is actually central to understanding Matt's current state of mind. Before Matt ever approached Zach and Jeremy with his desperate corporate proposal, we believe he first went to Jacob. Not for a massive cash investment, but for something else: moral and physical support. Think about it. In the last year, Matt has made numerous public overtures to Jacob, praising his work on the farm, highlighting his help with the pre-pumpkin season setup. This wasn't just a father being proud of his son. Our theory is that this was a calculated campaign by Matt to lure Jacob back into the fold. He saw in Jacob a chance for a different kind of legacy, a more authentic, less commercial version of the farm. He likely offered Jacob a significant role, perhaps control over the agricultural side of the business in exchange for Jacob becoming his ally. He needed a son, any son, to be on his side. Jacob's rejection would have been devastating because it wouldn't have been about money. Jacob's rejection would have been about principle. A source who knows Jacob well speculates that he would have seen any attempt to save the farm in its current state as a fool's errand. In Jacob's worldview, the farm's problems aren't financial. They are spiritual. It has become a commercialized tourist trap, a monument to the very artifice he has spent his adult life rebelling against. His rejection would have been a quiet, philosophical dagger to the heart of Matt's entire identity. And if you look closely at Jacob and Isabel's social media over the past few months, you can see what might be interpreted as subtle commentary on this family crisis. Vague posts about the emptiness of materialism, the importance of living authentically, and the poison of chasing wealth. Are these just general life musings, or are they the carefully worded reactions of a son watching his father's materialistic empire crumble? Having already warned him it was built on a foundation of sand, Jacob wasn't at the emergency meeting because in his mind, the emergency happened years ago and his verdict was already in. The aftermath and the future of a broken empire. So where does this leave the Roloff family now? The secret meeting is over. The proposal has been rejected. The lifelines have been cut. According to our reports, the fallout has been swift and brutal. Matt Roloff is now more isolated than ever. His relationship with Zach is shattered, likely beyond repair. His relationship with Jeremy is now purely transactional. He has been rebuffed by Amy and put in his place by Chris. And Caryn Chandler is reportedly at her wit's end, watching the dream retirement she signed up for evaporate into a fog of debt and stress. The dream house is no longer a symbol of their future, but a monument to Matt's hubris. One has to wonder how much more she can take. Is she questioning her future with a man whose financial decisions could leave them both with nothing? The sibling dynamic has also shifted in a profound way. This crisis, ironically, may have done more to unite the twins than any family gathering in the past 5 years. Our theory is that after that conference call, Zach and Jeremy had their own private conversation, a conversation where they likely acknowledged that they both separately made the right call. They escaped. They are united now, not by a shared love for the farm, but by a shared understanding of the danger it represents. And finally, what does this mean for the show itself? For Little People, Big World, this is perhaps the most critical question. Our theory is that the show is now Matt Roloff's last and only lifeline. He doesn't just want the show to continue for fame or to tell his story. He needs it to continue for the paycheck. That TLC money is no longer a bonus. It's the only thing keeping the lights on. This puts TLC in a position of unprecedented power. They can demand more drama, more access, more conflict because they know their star is financially beholden to them. The upcoming season may be the most raw and real season we have ever seen, not because of scripted drama, but because we will be watching a man genuinely fight for his financial survival. The family's pain is now the show's greatest asset. The Roloff empire, once a symbol of achieving the American dream against all odds, is now a cautionary tale. A story of a patriarch who flew too close to the sun, whose dreams became obsessions, and who now risks losing everything: the farm, his fortune, and his family. The question is no longer who will inherit the farm. The question is, will there be anything left to inherit? The reports we've shared tonight are, of course, based on insider sources and our own exclusive analysis. The family will likely never confirm these details publicly. But the evidence is all around us, in the strange social media posts, in the postponed wedding, in the sudden move to Washington, and in the deafening silence from the once thriving Roloff clan. The pieces fit. The story makes a terrifying kind of sense. What do you think? Do you believe this theory? Was Matt's proposal a desperate act of a loving father trying to unite his family, or the selfish move of a man trying to get his family to pay for his mistakes? Let us know your verdict in the comments below. And be sure to subscribe to LPBW Update because we have a feeling this story is far from over. We'll be tracking every development and we'll bring you the truth, no matter how difficult it is to hear.